Hello and welcome to another tutorial from Kagan Productions. This time, cards, many cards. All our games have cards. Who doesn't love cards? These beautiful cards from an upcoming Wise Wizard Games Robot Quest, which I've featured on this channel in the last one. I love these designs, and today we'll see how to make a nice stack of cards and make them shiny. So, just off the bat, if you haven't seen my other two tutorials, I would recommend starting at the first one if you're a complete beginner to Blender. There I try to cover the basics of, navigation, movement. Oh, wait, I just added something new here, and that's turning on the keys so you can see what I'm doing rather than me having to tell you exactly what I'm clicking or pressing. So down here, you'll be able to see exactly what I'm doing. So in the first tutorial, I covered navigation, basic movements, G, scaling, rotation, everything else. So go look at the first one. I cover everything there. Here, we're going to jump straight into it. And this time we will delete the cube, poor cube. And we're gonna add a plane. Okay, what I just did was Shift A. But you can also reach this menu from up here. Add, mesh, plane. And this is basically just a flat plane. It has no height at all. And we're basically going to use this as the base for our card. We'll have to make it the right shape, give it rounded corners, and give it some thickness, of course, because even though cards are very thin, they do have some thickness, and that's really felt in 3D. Okay, so first of all, like I said, we always want to try to keep it as close as possible to real-world dimensions. So we're gonna go and do a Google search, and yeah, I have a lot of tabs open. That's how I like it. And I searched poker card size. Let's suppose this game has just regular poker card sized cards. So we can see it's 56 millimeter, but by 88.9. So let's just even copy paste those dimensions into this box over here. So X is 56 millimeters. Just remember, make sure that either you type in 0.056 meters, or you literally type mm for millimeters to make sure you get it right. And 88.9. There we go. It's tiny. Zoom in by clicking the period, numpad period. And if you're on a laptop and you don't have a number pad, you can just go up here and frame select it. There we go. Next thing we want to do is to give first of all, before we continue, this is really important. Every time you resize an object, you want to apply the scale. Okay, just to make sure all sort of effects and textures work on this work correctly. So you need to click Control A and apply the scale. This way it turns the scale over here to uniform, 1 by 1 by 1, rather than this by this by this. Okay, I don't want to delve into it too deeply, but always remember to apply scale. It's something I constantly forget, and then I get into all sort of trouble down the road when I want to do all sort of textures or UV maps or anything. So just make sure whenever you have the final form, the final size of your object, just Control A and apply scale. You could also do it by going to Object, Apply Scale, and make sure this is 1 by 1 by 1. Okay, that being said, let's go and make our corners. First of all, rounded corners. We always have rounded corners. They look nice. How do we do that? We need to first of all go to Edit Mode, okay, by clicking Tab, or by going up to this window and going to Edit Mode. And then we need to bevel the corners. How do we bevel the corners? We press Control B, pull it out, and then nothing happens. Why? Because there's two types of bevels. There's bevels of the edges and bevels of the vertices. Vertices are these little points at the edge. So how do we make sure we're doing the right form of beveling? We open this up before we touch anything else. If you touch anything else, or you do like a keystroke or anything, it'll disappear. So let's do that again. Control B, open this little window, and instead of edges, click on vertices. Oh, this looks like a nice card with rounded edges. What happened? First of all, the width here. Move it to 0. Okay, that's starting to look right. Now segments will give it a nice bit of roundiness. Okay, don't go too overboard. I think 7 is good. 7 would look fine. And width, you want to change it if you click on shift. As you click on it, then you have fine tuning it, and then you can fine tune it to roughly how you feel cards should look like. And tab out of it, go back to object mode. Okay, that's the base mesh of the card, but now we need some thickness because this is infinitely thin. So the easiest way to do it, I found, is to go over here to this little wrench. These are modifiers, and you have like tons and tons and tons of options here to do all sort of fun stuff. And we're going to go to generate and solidify. And that basically simulates a thickness, and we need to figure out how thick a playing card is. So go back to your Google. So a standard poker card is between 17 millimeters, 0.17 millimeters and 0.24 millimeters thick. I'm gonna go with 0.24 just so it looks nice and thicker, and it'll be easier to feel the weight. Just paste that into the thickness here, make sure it's millimeters. And another thing, I don't know if this actually makes a difference, but rather than -1, I do +1. So the solidifying goes upwards rather than downwards into a table. If you have a table or something like that, you want it obviously to move upwards rather than downwards. Okay, last thing you want to do before we continue is to apply this modifier. This will turn this information into actual geometry. So if we look closely in edit mode, you see there is actual thickness to the card, which will be important later on. If you don't do that, then you can't actually select this. It's still technically a flat plane, although it looks like it has some geometry. And now all we need to do is add the texture. Just like with the box, add a new material, name it, not box, sorry, name it card. Also, don't forget to name your objects to find them later. That's super, super important. Go to base color, image texture, open, find your card back, and there we go. Blender will automatically project from the top down. That's the default setting. With our case, it just works perfectly. What we want to do though is to give it some more shininess, because cards are nice and shiny. So scroll down here, you'll see there's roughness here. This basically tells you how much of the light is dispersed when it hits the card. If you drag it all the way down to 0, the card will be like a perfect mirror. It's reflecting back the light over here. Sorry, there's this light. It's way up here, okay? And if we take it all the way to the other side, it's like a very, very, very rough rock. So we don't want that. We want something which is roughly, boom, psh, I'm a dad, I'm allowed to make those types of jokes. 1.2 or 1.3, or, you know, something sweet in the middle. Yeah, that looks good. So there we go, we have a nice and shiny card, but Robot Quest Arena is a deck builder. We should create a deck out of this. Can't just have this card all by himself. So before we do that, there's something else that we need to do to make the card a little bit more realistic, and that's actually change the texture of the side of the card. It seems like, you know, there's no way you could see this when we have a deck, but you'll see that it does make a big difference. So go to the edit mode, and in order to select this whole loop around the card, you need to click Alt, hold Alt, and just click on the side here, and it should select the entire ring around, it's called a loop, the entire loop around the card. Then we want to add a new texture, new, call it card side, and click assign. That's really important. And give it not entirely white, not too gray, just you know, a little bit of an off-white. Maybe make it just a little bit yellowish. And yeah, I think that should be fine. Now you'll see why this is important in a moment. So now how do we make a deck of cards? So we could obviously just duplicate. The way you duplicate is Shift D, just duplicate object. We could duplicate and just place them on top of each other and do this for as many cards as we have, but that would take ages. Blender always has a fast way of doing things. Almost anything that you can imagine, there's a faster way of doing it. It's just experimenting till you find it. So this one is actually pretty simple, and it was taught to me by George from Nero Creative, which does amazing Kickstarter videos. He's a phenomenal animator, and I'm sure you've seen his work. So he gave me this trick, which is really cool. What you need to do is go to the modifiers again. Make sure if you haven't applied the solidify modifier, do it now, otherwise you'll run into problems. Go to the Array Modifier, which is basically a duplication tool, which makes it much easier. So we want to duplicate not on the X factor, but on the Z or Z factor. Okay, now we can't really see it because it's just one card, but if we have, let's say, 52 cards, there we go. Now, why was it important to have the sides of the cards be white/gray? Is because if we didn't do that, here you'll see, if I take off this material, then it sort of smudges the card back, the texture. So we don't want that. So that's why we did the card side texture. Okay, but this still doesn't look realistic. This looks like a big fat card. So how do we make it look more realistic? And this is really what George taught me. You need to apply the modifier, go into edit mode, press P, and then separate by loose parts. And this will turn all these 52 cards into individual objects. Until now, they weren't really individual objects. They were just mathematically taken from that single object. Go out of edit mode, and you can see, you can literally like click every single card here. So the last thing we would need to do is to randomize the rotation a little bit to make the bits, the different cards sticking out in like different angles. To do that, you need to click F3. I already have it typed out, but just type rand and it will appear randomize transform, and go to the rotation on the Z axis and do about 3%. And this is all you need to just give the cards this realistic feeling, as if someone actually placed them on a table and they sort of dispersed a little. Yeah, not bad. Let's see how that looks in the final render. So there we go, pretty sweet deck of cards. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe for more tutorials to how to create your game layout. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks so much for everyone that has shared and liked and commented so far. I'm really glad this is helping people, and I'm enjoying making these. So let's hopefully get to more advanced stuff down the road. Bye for now.